Exodus chapter 17, if you want to follow along. We're going to share a couple of longer stories from the Bible this morning, and I didn't type all that stuff into the screen, so you'll want to follow along. And this is good. This is good stuff. We're picking up in the story of the people of Israel. They have fled Egypt. They've crossed the Red Sea, and they're beginning this long journey in the wilderness. The Sinai Peninsula is where they are. And we're picking up in Exodus chapter 17 at verse 8. And here's what we read. While the people of Israel were still at Rephidim, the warriors of Amalek attacked them. And Moses commanded Joshua, choose some men to go out and fight the army of Amalek for us. Tomorrow I will stand at the top of the hill holding the staff of God in my hand. Now, when I began to research this account this week, I was thrilled when I found a Google image from Google Earth. Scholars have discovered exactly where this place is on the Sinai Peninsula, and thanks to Google Earth, we have this image of the actual hill where Moses stood. And so the battle would have taken place down in that valley below this tall hill, 250 meters above the sand. The battle began to take place, and Moses stood at the top of that hill, and as long as he held the... Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, because I'm going to keep reading. Stick to the script, Russ. We get in trouble when I get off the script. Sinai Peninsula, hill. Oh, I want to tell you about Amalek. A lot of times you read these stories in the Bible and you don't know who these people are. Let me tell you a little bit about Amalek. Amalek, this nation, were desert dwellers that just kind of moved around kind of nomadically in this Sinai area. They were descendants of Esau. You remember the patriarchs? There were two brothers, Jacob and Esau. Jacob became one of the patriarchs of the nation of Israel. Esau kind of disappears from history, but what we know is he had a son named Amalek, and his descendants became these desert people that wandered around, and we find multiple accounts in the Old Testament of them attacking Israel. Here's the kind of people they were. History tells us that they were fierce. They were warring people. And they often attacked people when they weren't provoked. They were mean. And in Deuteronomy 25, we read that they actually attacked Israel from behind, striking down the weakest people in the community first. So they didn't even really fight fair. These were the people that Israel was going to war with in this moment. Now, we understand, or maybe you don't, let me just tell you, the people were migrating from Egypt to the promised land in the north, the land God promised that they would inherit, and they were just passing through this area. They posed no threat to the people of Amalek, but Amalek attacked them anyway. And so God instructed Joshua, go down and engage this army. And so now I'm picking up in verse 10, if you still have your Bible open. So it says, Joshua did what Moses had commanded, and Joshua fought the army of Amalek. Meanwhile, Moses, Aaron, and Hur climbed to the top of a nearby hill. And as long as Moses held up the staff in his hand, the Israelites had the advantage. But whenever he dropped his hand, the Amalekites, they gained the advantage. And so Moses' arms soon became so tired that he could no longer hold them up. So Aaron and Hur found a stone for him to sit on, and then they stood on each side of Moses, holding up his hands. And so his hands held steady until sunset, and as a result, Joshua overwhelmed the army of Amalek in battle. Now, there's something that I want to share with you today that's just very simple. It's a spiritual principle that comes from this account in the Old Testament. Lots of things we could talk about in this account, but here's what I want you to know. It's our big idea today. You won't win the battle fighting alone. I want you to think about this today. You won't win the battle fighting alone. You've got to have a group of people that are going to hold your arms up. You've got to have somebody in your life who's praying for you and investing in you. You've got to have an army of people that are joining you in the battle, because you won't make it in this life if you're fighting alone. Now, I hear a few quiet amens. I'm assuming that some of you have learned this in your lives. But I also have this deep sense in my spirit today that there's somebody here today that you have isolated, and I think this message might be for you today. You need people to join you in the battle, because you're not going to make it if you do it alone. Now, most of you know Chris and I took a trip. It was a trip of a lifetime. We took a trip to Africa, and last week I shared kind of a travel log. I promise you, today is the last travel log that I will share. I won't make you, I am that old man that makes you look at all my slides. But I won't do it after today. But we saw this principle illustrated when we went on our safari in the Masai Mara. It was an awesome experience. We rode around in these safari trucks that were completely open air. There was nothing separating, there was no glass, there was nothing separating us from the animals. I expected it to be kind of like going to Yellowstone, where we would need binoculars and we would see things far on the horizon. The Masai Mara was so different from Yellowstone because the population of animals in the Masai Mara is in the hundreds of thousands of animals of all these different varieties. We saw animals everywhere, and most of them were right outside of our vehicle. It was incredible. But one of the things that we observed on our trip was that the animals have this survival skill built into them. God made them this way. They understand that they won't make it if they become isolated. And so everywhere we went, we saw animals in groups, protecting each other, taking care of each other, looking out for each other. For example, we saw zebras. I love zebras. Now, before this trip, I didn't really care about zebras, but are they awesome? And we learned, somebody told us that the reason God gave them these stripes is because the stripes confuse the flies. The flies don't know where to land. Isn't that interesting? I don't know if that's true. Somebody said it. But the important thing that I want you to see is that these zebras gather in groups. And whenever we would see the zebras, it's kind of making me dizzy looking at them. Whenever we would see the zebras, they stood in this pattern where they would cross their necks like this, sometimes in layers of 3 and 4 people. And our guide told us what's happening is they're making sure that somebody can see in all directions, because they know that they can be vulnerable to the attackers, the lions and the cheetahs and the leopards that coexist in the Mara. And so this is a way of surviving. They stay together in groups, and they know that they can't be isolated or somebody's going to be vulnerable and they might become dinner. We saw warthogs. Pumbas, yes. Even in Africa, they call them Pumbas. These little guys are so funny. And while most of the other animals, like we saw the zebras and giraffes and elephants, and most of them were not afraid of human beings, these little warthogs, literally that tail is like an antenna, and as soon as they would see us coming, they just turned to run. And I just imagine their little voices going, run away, run away, run away, run away, and they would just take off. In fact, it was really quite remarkable that I got this video at all, because every time we saw them, they were just gone. And these little Pumbas, these warthogs, they're created really interesting. You can see that they've got multiple layers of tusks on the front of their noses. They're fierce little fighting animals. And even though they're little, they fight because they're not going to become dinner for anybody. But they live in family groups. And you know who's in charge of the family group? Mama. Mama is in charge of the group. And they live in these little dens that are created by the aardvarks. I don't know how they get rid of the aardvarks, but and the way they live, the way they sleep, is they back into the dens so their snout with those tusks is facing out. Okay? and they stay together. Mama keeps them together. I thought they were so funny the way they run with their tails straight up in the air. My video doesn't quite show this exactly, but that tail is just straight up in the air, and something I read online was that is like that's a signal. Everybody run this way. That tail is right above the grass, even though they're close to the ground. They're just taking care of each other because the rule of survival is you can't get isolated. You've got to stay with the group. We saw this awesome group of water buffalo. And I actually zoomed my picture in because I think their hairdos are so pretty and kind of serves as inspiration for my mustache. But there were hundreds and hundreds of water buffalo. And they stay together, and their strategy for survival is everybody faces out, and the babies and the sick ones stay in the center of the group. Everybody else, and look at those horns. You wouldn't want to wrangle with that animal, right? But you can't get isolated, or you might become dinner. But I think my favorite, and this seemed to be the favorite of our group, our favorite was an antelope-like animal called a topi. And the topi are so interesting. I don't know if you can see in my picture, it's not, he's a little bit in the shade in the front, but the locals call them blue jeans, yellow socks. Because they've got these blue streaks on their flanks, and then their legs are bright yellow. And that's just interesting. I don't know why the colors are like that. Nobody explained that to me. But you could look at this picture and you might assume that this topi is alone and he's isolated, and you would be mistaken. This topi is the sentry for the group. And all of the other animals are laying behind that termite mound. There were termite mounds everywhere. You can kind of see them in the background of the picture. Termite mounds everywhere. And the topi would stand on these termite mound, and they would take rotating shifts. Somebody is always on the lookout. And he's called the sentry. And everybody else is laying in the grass, resting, relaxing, just having a really nice day because they know somebody is on the lookout. And nobody does it alone. Because you're going to become dinner for somebody if you're not staying with the group and if you're not paying attention. I love the topi. Now, while we're driving around, we did come across some lions. And this group was incredible. So they do not have stripes to ward off the flies. They were just covered in flies. They're kind of disgusting. But anyway, here's this lion. This was a group. Chris, do you remember how many mamas was in this group? There were 2 mamas and I think 5 cubs. And we're watching these guys, and I've got lots of video, but this one is the one I chose to show you because as we're watching, all of a sudden we realized, oh, there's a carcass laying there. And we asked the guide about the carcass. What's happening here? He said, oh, that was dinner last night. And we said, can you tell what animal that was? And he said, oh, undoubtedly, I recognize the structure of that animal. That's a topi that got separated from his group and became dinner. Interesting. Then we kept driving. We were up on the bank of a big river, and as we were driving, we came across this guy. He also became dinner. That was too much for this pride of lions to eat, but Mama Lion wasn't very far away. She was just basking in the sun, enjoying the after effects of last night's dinner. I don't know where the others were. We just kept driving. Don't get isolated from your herd. I think that's the overarching message that we heard when we were in the Masai Mara. And it reminded me of this verse from the New Testament. It's up on the screen. 1 Peter 5, verses 8 and 9 say this: stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Do you know that you have an enemy of your soul that wants to make you dinner? Now, I don't mean to be cute. This is what the Bible says. He's seeking someone to devour. Stand firm against him, Peter tells us, and be strong in your faith. And now, I realize a lot of times we just stop reading right there, but this next sentence is so important. Remember that your family of believers all over the world is going through the same kind of suffering that you are. Isn't it interesting that Peter connects the threat of the enemy that would like to make you dinner to the family of believers, that if you stay connected to your family of believers, you're going to be able to resist the enemy and you're going to be safe. I think it's so critical that we understand this and that we hear it, because you can't go it alone. You're not going to win the battle if you're isolated. I was going through all of my pictures from Africa this week and looking at some videos, and as I was doing that, I realized I had a video that illustrates that this is true in the wilderness, even for human beings. And sometimes I think we think that we're the king of the beasts and we're invulnerable. I don't know about you, but I always worry about people that go hiking and backpacking by themselves, because... And this was illustrated. So I had this video, and I was watching this video. It's a video of hippopotamuses swimming in the river. They're awesome creatures, just amazing. And what I didn't realize was that I had captured a conversation between our guide and my friend Jay, who was with us on this safari. So there's really cool video of hippos, but I want you to hear the conversation. Listen to this.
So if you like to sit down again, hello guy, Jay, go there. I was just in the bathroom. Just go here. Go here.
Now Cheryl was trying to deflect by saying Jay is picking flowers. Jay needed to go to the bathroom and he wanted some privacy. Do you hear the urgency in the guide's voice? Would you play the video one more time? I want you to hear the urgency in this guide's voice.
So if you like to sit down again, hello guy, Jay, go there. I was just in the bathroom. Just go here. Go here.
Go here. Don't go there. Go here. And so poor Jay, we all just turned around and didn't watch. But you don't go behind a tree in the Masai Mara where there's predators everywhere. You don't isolate. It's true for everybody. Topies and warthogs and water buffalo and human beings. Because you won't win the battle fighting alone. Do you hear what I'm saying? Let me go back to that Exodus passage. Sometimes you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're the Joshua. And as I look around the room, I see lots of people who are like Joshua. You are strong and courageous. You're a person who isn't afraid to fight the spiritual battles. You will engage. You will stand firm. You will stand your ground, and you will engage the enemy of your soul fearlessly. You will fight for your church family. You will fight alongside your church family. You're a warrior spirit. Sometimes you're a Joshua, but you can't do it alone. You've got to have the people fighting alongside you, and you need the Moses standing up on the hill. Sometimes you're a Joshua. Sometimes you're a Moses. And we've got people here in our church family that you're that seasoned leader. And you've been around the block a few times. You have a lot of memories. You have a lot of Christian experience. You've got a lot of church experience. And you know how to pray. Anybody else thankful for the people in this church that know how to pray? And sometimes you're Moses. And you're that person that's standing in the gap and you're just pleading with the Lord to make sure that Joshua's going to win the battle. We need Moseses in our lives. And even if you're a Joshua, you need to know that you're connected to somebody that stands like a Moses, and they will hold the staff, and they're going to hold the fort, and they're going to make sure that you win the battle. You need Moseses. And those of you that are Moses, man, we need you. But sometimes you're going to be in the place of Aaron. Aaron's an interesting person. Aaron came alongside, Aaron and Hur, these two men came alongside, and they held Moses' arms up. And it'd be easy to just stop there, but let me tell you a little bit about Aaron, because he's an interesting person. Aaron was Moses' brother. Aaron was the first high priest of Israel. So he carried a lot of spiritual responsibility. But primarily, he was the man that just stood and filled in the gap when Moses was unable to do it. So Moses had a stutter. He didn't like public speaking. So a lot of times he would tell Aaron what to say. Aaron would speak for him. He was the mouthpiece for Moses. And he was great in that way. But here's the other thing we know about Aaron. Aaron was a people pleaser. And sometimes he made terrible decisions. You remember the golden calf incident? Aaron was in charge. And one of the things that I like about Aaron was that even though he had failed, even though he was someone who probably carried some guilt and shame in his lifetime, he never stopped lifting up Moses' arms. He served his entire life in a support role, and we need Aarons in our lives. Sometimes spiritual leaders get real tired, and I need those of you that are the Aarons in my life. Those of you that serve as elders, I am so thankful for you in my life. Those of you that serve on my ministry teams, I am so thankful for you in my life. Those of you that are in groups and you feel like maybe you don't have a place to fit in, and you feel like you're kind of a nobody in the group, listen, we need people like you. All of us need the Aarons in our lives. Sometimes you're going to fill the role of an Aaron, and the community of faith needs you. But sometimes you're going to be a Hur. Even if you're a him, you can be a Hur. No, never mind. Stick to the script. Stick to the script. All right. Spelled differently. Sometimes you're going to fill the role of Hur. Let me tell you a little bit about Hur. The Bible doesn't talk about Hur very much, but there's a long Jewish tradition, an oral tradition related to Hur. And tradition says that Hur might have been Moses' brother-in-law. So Moses had a sister named Miriam. Do you remember her? She was a worship leader, and Hur may have been Miriam's husband. And Hur was a truth teller according to Jewish tradition. And he stood at that golden calf incident, and he opposed Aaron, and Jewish tradition says that Hur was actually killed by a mob because he was a truth teller. Now, those of you that are truth tellers, and sometimes you get into trouble because you say things that people don't want to hear, do you know we need you in our community? We need you to hold up our arms. We need you to be speaking the truth in love, hopefully. But God has a purpose for those of you that serve that role in the community, and we need you. The danger that I see is sometimes in the Christian community, we're tempted to isolate because we feel like people aren't listening, or people don't like us, or I've made too many mistakes, or I'm a failure. Whatever the reason is, sometimes we begin to isolate and we pull back and listen. We need each other. Because you won't win the battle fighting alone. I want you to remember this. You won't win the battle fighting alone. Let me take you to the New Testament. If you've got your Bibles still open, would you go to Mark chapter 2? we see this same kind of thing illustrated in the life and ministry of Jesus. And this is a story that I've shared many, many times. But it seems so important to share this morning. Mark chapter 2. When Jesus returned to Capernaum several days later, the news spread quickly that he was back home. Now keep in mind, this is at the very beginning of Jesus' ministry. We're only in chapter 2 of the Gospel of Mark. Okay? The news spread quickly that Jesus is back in town. Soon, the house where he was staying was so packed with visitors that there was no more room even outside the door. While he was preaching God's word to these people, 4 men arrived carrying a paralyzed man on a mat. And they couldn't bring him to Jesus because of the crowd, so they dug a hole through the roof above his head. Then they lowered the man on his mat right down in front of Jesus. And seeing their faith, Jesus said to the paralyzed man, "My child, your sins are forgiven." Now, I love this image that's up on the screen because it illustrates some things. One of the things, it kind of gives you an idea of the scale and the amount of work that it must have taken somebody to dig a hole in the roof. When you really start to think about it, a human being laying on a mat is a pretty big thing, right? And so these guys didn't just like poke a hole with a little chisel and drop this guy down. They had to do quite a lot of work to get enough space. And I can imagine that as Jesus is teaching, there's dirt and debris falling down all around him. I mean, just kind of let your mind go with what did it take for these guys to get this man to Jesus? These were really good friends. These were men who really loved their buddy. And they weren't going to let anything stop them getting this man to Jesus. Why? Because they knew Jesus is the hope of the world. Jesus is the only one that can bring the answer and the healing and the miracle that this man needs. I'm going to go off script again right here. Please forgive me. Jesus, help me not to say anything stupid. Just kidding. I want to share with you, though, that something that happened last week. I was hoping Diane would be here. Diane and Roger Rumbold usually sit right over here. Last Sunday, when we were done, we celebrated water baptism last week, and it was an awesome day. And as soon as we were done, Diane came up to me and she said, "Russ, I have to tell you," she said, "I've been struggling with hearing in my left ear for many years. I've never told you this, but I've got some deafness in my right ear." And she said, as you were preaching on today, this was last Sunday, as you were preaching, I began to experience tingling on this whole side of my face, and the Lord opened my ear as you were preaching, and I can hear. Nobody prayed for her. Nobody anointed her with oil. God just did it because Jesus was in the room. I called her on Friday to see how she was doing, or I think I texted her on Friday to see how she was doing. She said she's still able to hear out of that ear, and it's getting better every day. Okay? Listen. People need Jesus. We need Jesus. Your community needs Jesus. And whether you are the paralyzed man or you're one of the 4 friends that's carrying him to Jesus, we need to work together. We need one another to make sure that we get to Jesus. If you're just like the paralyzed man, sometimes you're going to need a group of friends to carry you to Jesus. And this is why I believe you need a small group. You need some people in your lives that are going to carry you to Jesus in those moments. But more importantly, listen to me, friends. Your small group needs you. I was really thinking about this week. So often when I'm talking about groups and when I'm talking about community and when I'm talking about these things and how we need each other and we can't be isolated, so often I talk about how a small group will benefit you. and why you need to be in community, because you're going to be blessed and you're going to learn and you're going to grow, and it's all about you. It's all about you. Listen, I began to think this week, every single person is important to every group. And we need you in a group because you have something unique to contribute to a group. You have something that nobody else can bring to a group. Maybe you're a warrior like Joshua, and you're going to be the one that's just standing in the gap for people who are too weak to battle for themselves. Maybe you're the Moses. Maybe you're the person in a group that you're the only one that really knows how to pray. You're the only one that has really practiced praying over the course of years, and your group is going to need you to be that person. Or maybe you're Aaron, or maybe you're her. You're just going to be the person that's going to hold the arms up and say, you can do this, and we're going to stand here with you until you break through your battle. Your group needs you. Your church family needs you. And I want to encourage you today, don't let yourself become isolated. We need you. I spent some time this morning reading through my notes and praying and asking the Lord, what is it this morning that you're really saying? I was asking the Lord to just give me a prophetic word for somebody here today. And this is what I heard. This is what I felt like the Lord was just dropping into my spirit today. I believe there might be somebody here today who has been deeply hurt by church, or deeply hurt by church leaders, or hurt by church members or church goers. And the temptation is for you to isolate. It's a natural response when you've experienced pain. I'm just going to withdraw. I'm going to quit. I'm not going to trust. I'm not going to trust again. Have you ever said that? Don't raise your hand or say amen real loud. You know what I'm talking about, right? And then my mind went back to the warthogs, the little Pumbas, with all the tusks. Do you know they have tusks that go up and they have tusks that go down? That's why they're so weird looking, right? And those tusks have different purposes. But I was thinking about this. What if that mama Pumbaa is chasing a baby and trying to get the baby into the den, and that tusk is just pushed a little too hard and that baby gets wounded from the mama? Would it be wise for that baby to say, that's it, I've had it with Pumbas, I'm going to go live with the lions? Not wise. Really, friends, in church, so often we get wounded by friendly fire. Do you know what I'm saying? And this is what I want somebody here to hear today. You may have been hurt by somebody who maybe had good intentions, or maybe they didn't have good intentions. It doesn't matter. But the worst thing you could do is to isolate away from the community of faith and withdraw and say, I'm never going to trust anybody again, because you need us and we need you. And we're standing together against the wiles of the devil who wants to make each of us dinner. Don't isolate. This is what I want you to know. Don't isolate. Learn the skill of forgiveness and let Jesus heal you. If he can heal Diana's ear, if he can heal a paralyzed man who is being dropped down through a roof, he can heal your heart that has been wounded by somebody in the church. But don't isolate. I'm always heartbroken whenever we have somebody who gets hurt at Connect, and it happens sometimes. I hate this part of church ministry, but sometimes people get hurt. And then and I watch sometimes as they withdraw, and I try to do everything we can. Always want to do everything that we can to reconcile and find a way to forgive and to stay in community. Got a phone call this week from somebody who had left their church, and they came to Connect, and they were with us for a year or two, and they let me know they were going back to their other church. And you know, I'm like, that's okay. You know, I'm glad you've got a community over there. That doesn't bother me at all. What bothers me is when somebody gets hurt and then they just say, I'm done with church. And I'm done with Christian people. And you've heard the line as often as I have, Christians are just hypocrites, right? And you know what? We are. And if you're not a hypocrite, you're probably lying. And if you ever find the perfect church, as soon as you join, you're going to mess that one up. We're human beings. We see things differently. And we've all got different gifts to play. Her was a truth teller. You know what I know about truth tellers in my church experience? Truth tellers hurt people a lot. Does it mean we don't want truth tellers in our community? That would be foolish. We need the mama Pumbas with their tusks. We need them protecting the herd, right? And we need the flawed people. We need the Aarons who have made mistakes, because sometimes with the mistakes comes a lot of wisdom and a lot of grace. Do you hear what I'm saying? Let's gather into community, and let's make sure that we're fighting the battle together. Because you won't win the battle if you're going it alone. Now, I want to talk a little bit about our small groups. Our semester is starting next week, and then just give me a few minutes to introduce you to our group leaders, and then I'm going to talk about something different, because not everybody is going to find a group that it works perfectly for you. So I want to give you some other ideas as well. But groups are going to start next week. We're doing the Jesus Undercover stuff. I think there's lots of them back there. Yeah, Chris? Okay. So if you're gonna do this, make sure you grab and Julie's got more coming, so we'll have more next week. She's not done making copies. But let me just walk through the groups that we have that are getting ready to assemble next week. So Ted and Betty Lang, they meet. Are you meeting at the Rembold still, Betty? Okay, so they meet on Thursdays in the Hidden Valley area, and you can sign up for that group. All of the signups are in the Church Center app, so that's the way you can do it. If you don't have the app and you want to sign up, Chris or Nikki can help you sign up, but Teddy and Betty Langs is a good group. Chris and I have a group for anybody that is new to Connect. And so if you are new to the Connect Church family, we invite you to join our community. We meet on Wednesdays. We have a dinner. And the rule for our group is you can join if you're new to Connect or if you've never been in our group before. Okay? So we'd love to have you join us. Kathy Morris has a group for women on Wednesday mornings, and you meet in the Hive, correct, Kathy? Your group over the years has grown and solidified. Kathy is a fantastic leader. And are you doing this stuff again this semester? All right. Hooray. I love it. Starting the 19th. Okay. Thank you. John Rudd, this was new last semester, and this community has just become a very healthy, vibrant community for young adults, and he calls it Family Dinner for Young Adults, or Young Adults Family Dinner. They meet on Sunday evenings, and John had this vision for people, so many of us that are married and have kids, or don't have kids or whatever. So many of us, Sunday nights is kind of this night where we hunker in and we're getting ready for the week and we have dinner and Sunday nights is just and so single people a lot of times have nothing to do on Sunday nights. John decided, I'm going to fill the gap, and it has become a really significant group of young adults that get together, have a meal, and I think they're doing Jesus Undercover as well. Great community. So if that's a group that you think you would fit in, that would be a great place for you to thrive. Sean and Becky Searle. Where are Sean and Becky? Oh, they're on their honeymoon. All right. Well, their family members are representing today. So they meet on Thursdays, which is a change. Am I right, Allie? They were meeting on Mondays before, so now they're moving to Thursdays. So if you're in this group, make sure you're aware of that. And I believe they have lots of room. Their house is large and beautiful. They meet in Belgrade, and so we'd love to get more people into that group if that works for you on Thursdays. Hearts for Prayer, Missy Bell. This has been, how long have you guys been meeting? Years and years. August of 2020, they have been meeting, and this is a great group. They pray. Are you doing any kind of a study this semester, or will you?
I think we're going to go on with your book.
You are? Okay, nice. Okay, but the focus of this group, these are people who love to pray. They go on prayer walks all over the city. They've got stories. What a great group. And then Dynamic Marriage is starting again. Kim and Jason Bennett. Jason's sitting back at the bistro table, starting March 2nd? Okay. March or February? March. Okay, so we're about a month out for this group, but such good things that I heard last semester. I think you had 5 couples that really grew and solidified in their relationships. And so I really encourage you, if you want to build your marriage, that would be a fantastic group for you to join. And then West of 60s. Kita, waving with a very small hand down here. This is a big group. How many of you had at your biggest gathering, Kita? 29. Okay. 29 people, 60 and older. They meet monthly for an event. So it's not like a Bible study group. This is just a group of people that love to get together and fellowship. And I think there's usually lots of food. So lots of reasons. And you should sign up in the app for this group so you get all the information. Yeah, Kita?
The next one is March 9th. All things pie in the evening. So we need you to sign up.
Okay. All things pie, March 9th. In the evening. I love pie. I need to sign up. And yes, okay, I'll sign up, Kita. And then if there's anybody interested, I will start leading my Sunday noon unofficial Weight Watchers workshop. And those of you that are aware, I've lost a ton of weight using the Weight Watcher method. It's not the only weight loss method, but I know that sometimes it's hard to do by yourself. And so last semester we met on Sundays from noon to noon 30. And if anybody would like to join me and Chris, we'll just hold each other accountable and pray together and see what God does there. And I need to get back on track. So maybe you need to come and crack the whip for me. Because that's going to be a problem, isn't it, Jeff? Sounds like a Seinfeld episode. No pie for you. That's right. Because Keita, you and Jeff are on Weight Watchers too. All you got to do is count it. You can have pie as long as you put it in your tracker. That's what I love about Weight Watchers is there's no off-limit foods. You just have to budget it. So it's kind of a good thing. Okay, now, before, musicians, would you come? Would you come? Before we finish here today, let me challenge you with this. Here at Connect Church, we have this structured small group ministry. But this is not the only way that you grow in groups. There's lots of ways for you to grow in groups. Maybe you have a family dinner every week. Could that become a small group in which you are very intentionally investing into the people that gather with you? Maybe you have some neighbors that you would like to lead to Jesus. Could you maybe start something, meeting every week or every other week or once a month, in which you are just building relationships and friendships and starting to help people understand who Jesus is and what Jesus has done for you? Maybe you have a break room at work where you could start gathering with believers or people who are curious about Jesus. You could use the Jesus Undercover stuff. You don't even have to, your friends and family members don't even have to come to church. This is a standalone thing. You could use this in any kind of environment. Just use this to get into the scriptures and take a deeper dive into what Jesus is saying.